Hello everybody, Realm Builder Guy here, and welcome back to the channel and a new Crusader Kings 3 Dev Diary. That's right, I am back from much needed vacation and a little bit of a work conference and all that good stuff, and I am back for a new Crusader Kings 3 Dev Diary. Thank you for everybody that has been watching, viewing, commenting in my absence. I really appreciate it. The channel hit 7,000 subscribers just the other day, so thank you so much for a channel that's not been around that long. That's pretty amazing. Got 2 months to go till we hit the 1-year anniversary here on the channel. Who knows, maybe we can add 3,000 subscribers in 2 months. That seems like a bit much, but hey, you never know. Of course, over the last 2 weeks I missed a few dev diaries. The Azure patch came out, didn't cover that. I thought about doing a roundup. I may do that on, say, Victoria 3, we'll see, of the stuff I've missed, but I'm not going to do that right now. We're going to focus on the latest Dev Diary number 65, One Culture is Not Enough. And again, if you are enjoying these Dev Diary videos, don't forget comments to let me know you like it. Likes always appreciated as well. So, here we go. Hello everyone. One Culture is Not Enough. Last week they did a look like in the upcoming overall, what culture in general looks like. This time around, let's have a closer look at what you go about creating your own culture. There are 2 different ways of doing so, forming a hybrid culture and diverging your culture. Both are slightly different in their approach and in what they allow you to do with your new culture. Now, while the cultural overhaul is a free feature that will accompany the Royal Court expansion, the ability to create a hybrid or divergent culture will require you to own the DLC. So there's a little hook there. You got to buy, you got to spend the $30 to be able to create a hybrid or divergent culture. Before we start, culture creation is quite dependent on the new cultural overhaul. So if you haven't yet read last week's development diary, I suggest you give it a read for context. Also keep in mind that everything shown in screenshots is still a work in progress. Okay. Forming a hybrid culture is a way for you to meld the aspects of your current culture with that of another in any way you so choose. There are a few restrictions you'll have to keep in mind before you are able to form a hybrid. First, the culture you want to form a hybrid with has to be present within your realm. No weird hybridization with cultures on other side of the world, please. Okay, makes sense. Secondly, you'll need a certain amount of cultural acceptance. You cannot go in and conquer an area to only create a new culture immediately, but the required amount can vary depending on your current traditions. Also, logic makes sense. And finally, you cannot hybridize with a culture of the same heritage as you. The reasoning here is that 2 cultures have to be different enough to warrant them being combined into a single culture, rather than just assimilating one in favor of the other. Once you are able to form a hybrid culture, you'll need to come up with a good name for it. We pick a default name that is a combination of the 2 cultures you are attempting to hybridize. Here we can see Afghan Kashmiri. Such as Andaluso-French or Greco-Persian. I do like Greco-Persian, even though Perso-Greco. Anyway, for added immersion and flavor, however, we have a set of names that can appear depending on which cultures you hybridize or where you are creating your new culture. For example, hybridizing a culture of a Frankish heritage with one of a Central Germanic heritage in the area in and surrounding Lotharingia, you can have a culture named Rhineländer, which of course means people who are from the Rhineland. You are, of course, free to name your new culture whatever you want as well. Starting with the pillars, you can freely pick between the 2 culture's pillars, mixing ethos, heritage, language, and martial customs as you'd like. For example, you can pick the heritage from culture A, but language from culture B. One caveat is that you have to pick at least 1 pillar from each culture. It isn't much of a hybrid otherwise, is it? So here we see hybrid culture, the pillars, traditions, and aesthetics. The ethos you can pick: heritage, Indo-Aryan, Iranian language, Kashmiri, Scythian, men only, Okay, the innovations that come with it, and then you can just click Form Hybrid Culture. Pretty straightforward. Same principle applies to traditions. You can pick and choose which traditions you want to keep from either culture, as long as you don't go above the slot limit. Makes sense. Pick up to 6 traditions from either culture. You can even choose only to pick a few traditions, leaving slots empty and give you room for future traditions you may want to adopt later. Some traditions are unique to certain cultures, regions, or heritages. However, so this is the only chance you might have to acquire traditions that normally would be out of your reach. So here you can pick the different traditions, makes sense. Then aesthetics, obviously you can pick how you want people to look. For some of the categories, you're even able to choose a hybrid option using the preset from both cultures. So you can pick the military equipment, the way it looks. You can do a hybrid of the architecture, which way you'd like to go, and then you just form it. And there you can see the fashion, coat of arms. Very, very nice. Very nice. The new hybrid culture will automatically acquire any innovation that either parent culture has discovered already, giving you the possibility to gain access to innovations that your previous culture has yet to discover. Before we move on, there's a prestige cost for forming a hybrid culture. Normally, creation isn't very expensive and relies more on having enough cultural acceptance for it to be valid. A high acceptance will reduce the cost, though, making it fairly cheap if you have managed to greatly increase acceptance. So here the strategy is bump up your acceptance, and the prestige cost is pretty low. The initial size of a hybrid culture on the map also depends on the acceptance you've built up between the two cultures. You decide to hybridize at the lowest required acceptance level. The hybrid will start out rather small. Rulers of hybrid cultures have a much easier time using the Promote Culture Council task in counties belonging to either of its parent cultures for a set amount of years after it has been formed. Very nice. Makes perfect sense. Diverge your culture. A divergent culture is essentially a culture that deviates from the original culture, allowing you the opportunity to shape it as you see fit. Similar to forming a hybrid, you get to choose a name for the new culture. Okay. The default name here, on the other hand, depends on your primary title. Diverging a culture as the King of Anatolia can give you an Anatolian culture, or Austrian if you are the Duke of Austria. This makes sure that divergent cultures always have a sensible name to them. Beta Israeli, interesting. At least most of the time. I did see a Wormsian culture in a recent Observer game from the county of Worms. As this hybridization, you are free to name it however you want. Okay. As for the pillars, option are slightly different. You can pick and choose any ethos. Language won't have any additional options for you most of the time. Makes sense. You are diverging your culture. You're not meshing them. You're not changing it. So language pretty much staying the same. It's logical. Martial custom can be changed as long as you fulfill the conditions for them, which would include things such as having corresponding succession laws. Sense. Aesthetics will also rarely have additional options. Again, you are divergent. Diverging from Norse in Sweden, for example, will give you access to Swedish aesthetics, but it's slight. You have to change at least one pillar in order to diverge your culture. Most of the time, you won't have a lot of valid alternatives for the additional pillars, so your only option will be to change your ethos. Okay. This guy here, the ethos, spiritual, bellicose, inventive, language, see, only one, marital customs, and then you can diverge the culture. Makes sense. You've got your traditions, can be replaced with something new as long as you are able to afford the tradition cost. Like hybridization, you will have plenty of options. You can replace a tradition with any other tradition that your culture fulfills the requirements of. Okay, oh, look at that cost. 10,800 prestige. And you can see here the prestige cost underneath here are the traditions. No cost for these. And here you can add those. Okay, diverging also costs prestige. Here are the costs. Scales on how much of your own culture you control. Attempting to diverge Greek as Byzantium will be fairly expensive. Meanwhile, attempting to diverge a small part of your culture, such as small Andalusian emir on the Iberian Peninsula, will be significantly cheaper. Dynamic culture emergence. The above options describe how you as a player will be able to create new cultures. That doesn't mean that cultures won't also appear dynamically. Over the course of a campaign, cultures may diverge depending on their situation. For dynamic divergent cultures, we decided that we wanted them to feel immersive and logical whenever they showed up. I'm a big fan of that. There are many factors that go into this, such as the culture size. If the culture is united under strong rulers, etc., divergent cultures will appear either in border regions where a culture meets another, or in island regions. Divergences also do not appear in the capital lands of the culture head, or to safeguard what is most likely the heartland of the culture. For example, one of the cultures that usually diverge a few times is the Bedouin culture. It's large, spread out, and some of its lands are under rulers that are not Bedouin themselves. On the other hand, we have Greek, a large culture, but with practically all counties of its culture united under one ruler. They tend to not diverge unless territories go independent. Makes sense. Hybridization, on the other hand, is something powerful rulers strive towards. If a ruler finds themselves ruling a large swath of land of a foreign culture while at the same time having no motivation to assimilate, they'll try and increase cultural acceptance until they're able to hybridize. They tend to want to hybridize with large cultures in their realm, the prime example being the Oghuz Seljuks wanting to hybridize with Persian above all other cultures they have in their realm. Some AI rulers do not pursue hybridization, though, such as large elective realms like the HRE, where cultures take turns being the top of the ruler, or realms such as the papacy. Makes sense. I'm glad they're building in, let's call it historical AI logic in this, otherwise it could get a little insane. By default, the AI will not create hybrids of hybrids, unless historical hybrids such as Maghrebi or English, as the naming schemes can quickly go out of hand. Though if you'd like the AI to do this, there's a game rule you can enable. There's also a small chance that hybrids appear in realms of not-so-powerful rulers. This allows interesting hybrids such as Hiberno-Norse to appear even from tiny realms. I do like that. Scottish Viking culture. That'd be kind of interesting. This happens through an event that can also occur for the player. These events will most often happen for cultures that have certain traditions, allowing them to be more easily create, that was poorly read out by me, hybrids, other cultures. Naturally, there's a host of game rules that allow you to customize, etc., etc. So here you can see hybrid cultural restrictions, relaxed, culture frequency. I mean, here, I'll restrict a lot of these things just because I already do that with heresies and so on, just because I like a little bit more historical gameplay. To round things off, let's take a look at a few examples of what the AI did during an observer game. First up, from the 867 start, and 200 years in, you'll see quite a few cultures here. Okay, so what do we have? Anglo-Norse hybrid culture emerged in 918. Well, there's Norse Gael right here. Cumbro-Norse, Anglo-Norse, very cool. You can also see that English has largely replaced Anglo-Saxon right here. Starting in 867, 100 years into the game. Kufan Bedouin divergence emerged in 933. Badarian Mashariki divergence emerged in 956. Kurdo-Mashariki hybrid culture emerged in 911. Miawandi Persian divergence in 907. And Shirvani Persian divergence in 946. You see, very, very interesting here. We got Assyrian. I don't like that. Okay. In another game starting in 1066, a Swedish noblewoman was made queen in the newly established kingdom of Jerusalem. Oh, that is so cool. You got Jerusalem here. You've got Mashariki Swedish. After a few generations, the local cultures merged in what would become Mashariki Swedish, ushering the kingdom into a new era of prosperity. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Let's see here. Mashariki Swedish culture. What do we have? Cultural pillars, North Germanic heritage, Arabic language, Mashariki Swedish aesthetics. Stand and fight, forest fighters. I'm sorry, that's just kind of cool. As mentioned earlier, we have a number of historical names for cultures that can appear in specific circumstances. If you have any cultural names that make sense for a divergent or hybrid culture, let us know. So please let them know. Here's also a side note, hotfix 1.4.2 for the Azure patch has been released today on June 22nd. As I mentioned when I covered the Azure patch, I expected at least one. We've already had 2 hotfixes to have to come out. And that's just something I kind of expected. So what do you guys think? Well, what are you going to go for? Are you going to go more for hybridization or divergence in culture? I personally find the hybrid culture more appealing, more interesting. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And that's it from this Dev Diary. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new, not to miss out on any CK3 content here on the channel moving forward. I've got a few things I have planned, some more guides, some historical stuff, and then of course, and you know, development diaries, but also some general discussion videos that I want to put out there. So let me know your thoughts, and until next time, I'm Realm Builder Guy, and I will talk to you soon.